Hey guys, how are you? Welcome, welcome. I wasn't going to do any more stuff on Snow White, but it looks like I keep getting pulled back in. I mean, I've been enjoying all the roasting and all of the criticism and everything else, but now we're beginning to get some wonderful behind the scenes exposés of what actually happened, and I'm discovering some interesting things about what happened with Rachel Zegler, because one of the things that nobody could understand was, how is it that Disney allowed her to keep running her mouth for a year and a half and didn't put the kibosh on her bullshit when they had a movie coming out with a hugely inflated budget, and there were all kinds of warning signs everywhere, and nobody did anything. Hi, everybody. Hello, my darling. How are you? So today, I have some fun stuff for you guys. First of all, I noticed that the Fatsos are streaming together again, Becky and Destiny. So I guess that we'll cover that tomorrow or the next day, because I guess that you guys enjoy going over their bullshit. And I'm not here to kiss anybody's ass. I think everybody is trash. But they just can't stop. They can't stop. This is all that they've got. So they're answering the same boring, tired questions over and over and over again. And I figure, fuck it. Might as well cover it, even though it's retarded. But people like retardation around here, I guess. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up this article in Variety. This article was chock full of goodness. Chock full of goodness. Now, I'm going to add this, and I'm going to do full screen for this. So here we go. Inside Disney's Snow White fiasco, death threats, beefed up security, and a social media guru for Rachel Zegler. Don't let social media guru, don't let that term fool you. It was a babysitter. They hired a babysitter for her. Now, I want you to keep in mind as we go through this article, Rachel Zegler is 23 years old. Okay? Hi, Martinez. She has no track record. Okay? She was the star of West Side Story and basically got outshone by the woman who played Anita, who ended up winning an Oscar, deservedly so, for her role. So, and also, West Side Story did not do very well at the box office, even though it was a great movie. Spielberg did a great job with it. She was in that Hunger Games movie, but she wasn't a lead in that movie. And now we've got Snow White, right? So it's not like she was a known commodity. It wasn't like she was someone who could put asses in seats. She had no proven track record. She was just a giant pain in the ass. So I want you to remember, 23 years old, an absolute nobody. Okay, Crystal. Well, we're going to go over that. All right. So on August 12, 2024, 3 days after Rachel Zegler hit the stage at Disney's D23 fan event to introduce the first official trailer of Snow White, which went over like a lead fucking balloon, by the way, she thanked supporters effusively in an X post for driving the teaser to 120 million views in 24 hours. 1 minute later, she added an afterthought in the same thread, and always remember, free Palestine. That addendum, which amassed 8.8 million views, nearly 4 times the number for the initial post, quickly made the rounds, with many inside the studio expressing shock that the Snow White star would commingle the promotion of its $270 million tentpole with any kind of political statement. A Disney executive raised the studio's concerns with Zegler's team, so I was wrong. It's not that Disney didn't reach out to her team. They did, only it made no difference. While the film's producer, Mark Platt, flew to New York to speak directly with her. Now, for those of you who don't know, Mark Platt is a legend in Hollywood, a legendary Hollywood producer. He put his ass on a plane to drive or to fly to New York to meet with this nobody. I mean, talk about absolutely amazing. Let me make this a little bit bigger. All right, there we go. But the actress, whose relationship with the studio began to unravel in 2022, so when she was 20 years old, during a contentious West Side Story awards season campaign, and continued as she trashed the beloved original Snow White, stood her ground, and the post remained. Behind the scenes, death threats towards Zegler's co-star Gal Gadot, who is Israeli, spiked, and Disney had to pay for additional security for the mother of four. I just want to point out that this is a classic example of the tail wagging the dog. Okay, an absolute nobody, a young actress who thinks that she knows better than the studio, than her team, than the producer of the film, who has money riding on this thing. And she doesn't give a shit. All right. She didn't understand the repercussions of her actions as far as what it meant for the film, for Gal, for anyone, says one insider. 3 months later, following the presidential election, Zegler posted "Fuck Donald Trump" and made Trump supporters never know peace on Instagram. Disney had had enough, given that the star was signaling to half the potential audience of an already troubled film plagued by costly reshoots to stay home. Platt made the case again to Zegler. After a back and forth, she began working with a social media guru paid for by Disney to vet any posts before the film's March 21 bow. Disney declined comment. Zegler did not respond to a request for comment. So once again, the producer of the film had to go hat in hand to kiss her ass, beg her to shut the fuck up, and they hired social media guru, my ass, a babysitter, to try and calm her down. Now that the film's dismal opening weekend, 87 million worldwide, is in the rearview mirror, Burbank brass are evaluating what went wrong. To put Snow White's global box office haul into perspective, it's about $34 million less than Warner Brothers' Joker Folie à Deux in October, but with a bigger budget by $70 million. I'm still astonished by how much it costs to film Snow White. Reshoots, whatever. I mean, I think that the final figure is a lie. I think it went well over 300 million. And that is absolutely obscene. It is crazy. You can't say that a live action remake of the most iconic film in the vault that cost 270 million, The Lies, and has been reshot multiple times, opening to $50 million is okay. The math does not work. That film should be $1 billion movie, said an executive at a rival studio when the film was tracking for a $45 million to $55 million domestic opening. It ended up at below even the low-end figure at $43 million. The Disney Zegler standoffs underscore the challenge Hollywood studios face as they attempt to rein in stars who court controversy on social media. For her part, Gadot kept her comments on geopolitics limited to offering support for the civilian hostages taken during the October 7th Hamas attack, and did not mix that message with the promotion of the film, which is the way you should behave. Zegler had already strained nerves at both the studio and Steven Spielberg's Amblin partners when she complained on social media that she wasn't invited to the 2022 Oscars as the star of the Best Picture nominee West Side Story, a film distributed by Disney. Sources say she had just begun production on Snow White in London, and Sean Bailey, then president of Walt Disney Studios Motion Picture Production, declined to cut her loose for the telecast. After Zegler aired her grievances publicly, the Academy provided her with a ticket even though she wasn't nominated. Bailey was gone from the job by February 2024. So yet again, this is her strategy, always. She had a fit, she threw a little tanty-poo, and got a ticket to the Oscars. And in the meantime, she pissed off Steven Spielberg, who, no offense, I don't think that Steven Spielberg is an especially vicious individual. He may be. I mean, he's been around for ages in Hollywood. But he's a fucking legend. Why would you do that? Why? He gave you your first big break in the movies, and now you're being a complete dick. All right. Months later at D23, she criticized the original 1937 Snow White, noting that the prince literally stalks the heroine. One top agent says, that was the moment that Disney allowed Zegler to control the narrative. The first time she shoots her mouth off, you nip it in the bud. Absolutely. Instead, the studio said nothing, and purists began to revolt. And as time went on, Disney became increasingly loath to weigh in on anyone's speech, considering that the studio was sued in 2024 by actress Gina Carano, who claimed she was fired from The Mandalorian for voicing her opinions on hot-button issues. They say all press is good press, but in Snow White's case, they were unabashedly wrong, says box office analyst Jeff Bach of Exhibitor Relations. Too much negative controversy surrounded this film for years, and it didn't help that the reviews were subpar, likely rendering this latest live-action adventure to D+ for many potential ticket buyers. A possible saving grace? A feeble marketplace where Snow White could stay a while, as many family films have despite the lackluster debut. Many additional factors contributed to the film's woes, including a COVID-related production delay and a fire on the set while the actors' strike scuttled some reshoots. Well, to the best of my knowledge, Wicked had the same problems, and it did just fine at the box office. Meanwhile, Disney's live-action movies, which were once reliable box office draws, have looked shakier in recent years, with the likes of Dumbo and Maleficent, Mistress of Evil bombing, and Peter Pan and Wendy getting shipped to Disney+. I heard that Peter Pan and Wendy was an absolute disaster, a woke nightmare that everyone hated. Still, there was no bad blood between the two Snow White leads, despite press reports to the contrary. Sources say the actresses got along well during the production, and things only got awkward during the run-up to release. Case in point, Zegler referred to Gadot as a professional pageant queen. In one Instagram reply that followed their joint appearance as presenters at the Oscars this month, considered a dismissive way to describe a fellow actress. Yes, that's a very dismissive way to describe a fellow actress. Some observers say Disney fueled the perception of a feud by scheduling the actresses for separate events during junketing. At the March 15th premiere, which eschewed traditional red carpet interviews, yeah, and opted for photos only, the two stars were mostly kept apart. Inside the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles, Zegler sat 2 rows ahead of Gadot and her family. But by that point, Disney had given up hope that the film could overcome the backlash that had been brewing like a fairy tale cauldron for years. Isn't that something? The thing that I'm not understanding, even after reading that article, even after facing, even after taking a look at what was written there, and it was intriguing. But what I don't understand is why they didn't lower the boom on that girl. I don't get it. She was the lead in the movie. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, she was the lead in the movie. But there comes a point where they're looking at the rushes every night or every day. They're seeing the backlash on social media. The trailer got over 1 million thumbs down. She wouldn't shut up. She wouldn't stop alienating people, potential audiences. But this is something that Disney has had a problem with for quite some time. They had that problem with Marvel and also with Lucasfilm, where the director of a TV show or a movie would come out and attack the core audience. You know. So this was sort of standard operating procedure, and Disney never put the kibosh on these idiots and said, look, we invested all this money in this movie. You are going after the people who have been supporting this franchise for years, and it's not going to work out well for you. Yeah. Oh, well. No. But look, I understand that when you're in your 20s, okay, and you have been given 2 huge opportunities, and I don't count Hunger Games because she wasn't the lead in Hunger Games, right? She was the lead in West Side Story, and she was the lead in Snow White. And so maybe that makes your head swell up a little bit. But you would think that at some point her team would sit her down and say, look, you are being given the opportunity of a lifetime. The people at the studio are mad. It is not often that the producer of a film at the level of Mark Platt comes hat in hand to kiss the ass of a 23-year-old nobody starring in a film. Maybe you need to cool your jets. And she wouldn't do it. She overestimated her own importance. And what nobody told her was that what Hollywood uses to measure success is the box office. It's money. It's people showing up to see you in a movie. It's not about, your singing coach or your parents or your high school drama teacher telling you, wow, you're really talented, you did a great job. No, it's about being able to put butts in seats, period, and how much money you make at the box office. That's it. And she showed absolutely no signs of being able to do that, which is a shame because West Side Story was fantastic. It was great. Spielberg did a great job. But it didn't do well at the box office. And as I recall, West Side Story came out at an awkward time. I mean, I can tell you that when I went to see it, I saw it in DC, and I went to one of those cinema and draft house theaters, and I was the only person in the theater when I went to see it, which is kind of cool. I like being the only person in the theater, especially when you go to cinema and draft house, because all those people who give you the menu and wait on you and stuff, if you're the only person there, you get a lot of attention. But it kind of sucked because it was so good, and it's the kind of movie that you want to experience with an audience. Same thing with Wicked. When I went to see Wicked here, there were maybe 5 people in the theater. So it's the kind of movie I wish I had seen at a sold out, performance. But she's not a commodity. She's not a proven box office draw. Let's put it that way. Disney saw the writing on the wall. They knew that they had a problem. They knew, I think, at a certain point that they should not have listened to Peter Dinklage, that allowing Peter Dinklage to talk them out or pressure them or shame them into cutting the dwarves out of the story was a huge mistake. And there was a lot of fan pushback due to that decision. And then on top of that, to have this girl running her mouth, and on top of that, to put Gal Gadot in a position where the studio had to hire bodyguards for this girl. I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable. And the thing is, well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. When people say that, you know, she can sing, and I mean, she may have looked like a pile of shit in the movie. The haircut was awful, and the color palette was awful, and the costumes were cheap, and all of that. For every person who makes it, who gets cast in a role like that, there are hundreds who are prettier, who are more talented, who have better voices, and who don't act like that, you know, who don't make a pain in the ass out of themselves, who don't challenge the studio, who don't act like the money that is being spent on the film is, you know, a like bottomless pit, you know, and who don't disrespect the people who are trying to get this fucking movie produced, which is exactly what she did. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but one of the comments that she made during the strike was, she was talking, one of the points of contention was whether or not actors should get should get residuals on streaming, which has been a point of contention for a while. And she was saying, well, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was something like, well, if I have to stand around for, 15, 18 hours in a princess dress, I want to get paid for all of those hours. Madam, that is not how it works. Okay? And there were, how can I put this? When people talk about the actors' strike, they think, oh, well, it's, you know, rich actors like Tom Cruise and like Nicole Kidman and people like that. The average actor, first of all, the average actor is unemployed 99% of the time. There is no work, okay? And the average actor pulls in a measly salary. They always have to supplement their income with another job. That is the average actor. I'm not talking about the people at the top of the food chain. They are not making a lot of money, okay? And they are scrambling for work. And it's dog eat dog out there. And so for this bitch to go out and talk about, oh, well, I should be paid for all the hours I'm in a princess. Are you listening to yourself? Are you listening to yourself? You put on a cheap, tacky costume. You stood around most of the day because there's a lot of downtime on movie sets. And you want to get paid for what exactly? For having a dresser dress you, a makeup artist put your makeup on, a hairdresser do your hair, put curlers or pins in your hair. As you sit on your ass, out of those 15 hours, she probably sat on her ass for 10. And you want to get paid for what exactly? These people are absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, the strikes, absolutely. Yeah. The strikes have a huge effect on everybody. The caterers, the makeup artists, the hairdressers, everybody in the crew, the cameramen, the soundmen, the gaffers, the set designers, the chauffeurs, the gophers, everybody. It's a cascading effect. It's a lot. A lot. There are a lot of people working behind the scenes who got screwed because of that strike. So it is just this entitled, spoiled attitude that leads me to believe that this girl, and I could be wrong, but I'm willing to put down a bet. This girl is never going to be cast in a movie again. Never. I understand that she's going to be playing Evita, I guess on Broadway. And it's going to be a reimagining of Evita. It's going to be staged by the same guy who did the new Sunset Boulevard, which was apparently a masterpiece. Incredible, starring Nicole Scherzinger. So she'll be in Evita, and she'll probably go back to her theater kid roots. And that's it. I don't think that anybody will ever cast her in a movie again. Why would you take that risk? Even for a little itty-bitty independent film. Why would you do that? And speaking of West End, thank you, Jen. West End, thank you. So London, not New York. But you know what it is, Jen? I was thinking of something else. So apparently, Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal are starring in Othello on Broadway. And it's apparently a huge hit. And the tickets cost a fortune. And I swear that if I didn't hate New York so much, that is something I would go to New York to see. It sounds fantastic. And I think that seeing Denzel Washington play Othello would be amazing. Jake Gyllenhaal is Iago. I mean, okay, I'll take it, but I think that it's great. And it has been getting incredible reviews. It's supposed to be fantastic. And the last time that I went to New York to see a play was, Network, starring Bryan Cranston, which was great. And before then, I went there to see Ralph Fiennes in Hamlet, which was incredible. But I was in DC, so it was easy to take the train back and forth to make it into a day trip. Now, I'd have to get to the airport. I would have to fly to New York. I'd have to stay in New York overnight. No. Yeah, Network based on the movie, Crystal, with Bryan Cranston playing the Peter Finch role, the anchor. And it was excellent. The rest of the cast was not great, but he was amazing. It was worth going just to see him because he is riveting. He's an incredible stage actor. So that was great. So I'm hoping that that Othello will be filmed and it'll stream and I'll be able to see it that way. So I can save myself a trip to New York because I really, really don't want to go. I don't want to go. But see, that's the kind of stuff that they need to do. Revive Shakespeare. Stop with the fucking, the same Andrew Lloyd Webber shit over and over again. And just bring some star power to Broadway and do something interesting. Karsten told me that Starlight Express is still being performed in London. I cannot believe it. Starlight Express, which is like such a relic of the 1970s, absolutely hysterical. And it's still being performed. Who knew? Who knew? It is such a corny, ridiculous show, but apparently people can't get enough of it. I don't understand, but there you have it. So anyway, that is my Rachel Zegler update. Yes. Yeah, his range is incredible. Obviously, I loved Cranston in Breaking Bad. He was amazing, but seeing him on stage was different because there he is, and he's got the voice and the presence. He was wonderful. He was wonderful, and he was the reason people went to see it. It was excellent. So anyway, that's my Rachel Zegler update. I'm kind of burned out on all the bad Snow White reviews because they're kind of repetitive. So now what I'm doing is I'm waiting to get more insight on what happened behind the scenes. And what I really want to hear or read about is what happened in the boardroom, what happened behind the scenes with all those executives running around trying to figure out how to fix the disaster they made. What happened what happened between like Bob Iger and not only the board, but the director of the movie, to what extent did they drive that poor man crazy? I want to know all the squabbles, all the brawls, all the problems, everything. And how it is that they kept on going. Because at a certain point, people were saying, maybe they'll shelve it. They couldn't shelve it. They spent too much money on it. They had to release it. So it was either going to go into the theater or it was going to go straight to Disney Plus. There was no other option, And now I'm really curious to see Dumbo and see why everybody hated it so much. I guess it was directed by Tim Burton, and people were saying, that it was too dark for kids. I mean, have they ever read a fairy tale or a children's story? They're all dark and sadistic and scary. But anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I know it was short. Maybe tomorrow, the next day, we'll talk about the Fatsos, who, of course, are back. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys the next time. Thanks, everybody.